I've told you the supernatural story about demonics. Demonics, as everyone knows, are evil beings. What could you do with beings if you could get your hands on them? In traditional justice, there's basically two penalties that you can use: imprisonment or execution. But that's in a physical world. And, it could be that if it's technological, if you could find all the ones that were involved, you could either kill them or imprison them. Mm, what would I do with them? I would kill them. I would kill them because that would end their existence and then they would never have an opportunity to do what they do now again. And it's very strange because when I was a youth and there was a debate about capital punishment being removed, um, well, it was just, it seemed like the most humane thing was not to kill other humans. But, I've heard stories about regular, lovely humans having members of their family murdered, horrible, horrible murders, and other stories about people that I know who were kidnapped and tortured. And the idea that, you can put people like this in a penitentiary with other people like them, and then, the justice system eventually lets them back out where they can go and do what they do, sometimes even to young children. But we were taught that, you could reform these criminals. And then there was the horror story of people who were framed, that never committed the crime, but were framed and were thrown into these situations where they were imprisoned or executed for crimes they did not commit. The voice that wants to tell me, it's still the demonics that talk to me, wants to keep interrupting me. That's one thing the demonics do, is they're never satisfied with what I have to tell you. They always want to throw in their 2 bits. That's all they're worth. 2 bits, and otherwise known as 25 cents. The 25-cent solution. Well, I think it's about 25 cents worth of electricity to put these things in electric chairs. Now, the other issue is we're taught that consciousness arises in the physical human brain because we learn about the brain in biology. And in physics, we're given quantum physics. And it's very obtuse and it's hard to figure it out. It's all about the double slit experiments. And quantum physics is very hard to figure it out. And the demon that likes to bother me has a hard time figuring it out because it's an incredibly stupid being and it gets bored listening to scientific explanations. But if you go into the expert metaphysicians, they talk about how consciousness comes first before physicality, which is the opposite of biology. And sometimes they throw like the observer effect of quantum physics into the equation so that it proves that. I don't think it does. I don't think the observer effect in quantum physics proves it, because if you live in a matrix, you can simulate that. In other words, if somehow they can take your awareness and put it into a computer-generated reality, and are we that far off of it? As I've said in previous lectures, you can go and see a Tupac Shakur concert where they project a hologram of this dead personality singing for you. Project Bluebeam is where they're going to project holograms in the sky to simulate an alien invasion. I've seen things that they do using these kind of technologies. Who are they? Well, they could be, Earth people. They could be people from off-world, or they could be people from what's known as the lower astral. And in this is old literature, it would be. I'm not sure if Madame Blavatsky in the 1880s talked about the lower astral, but it was kind of these people. They talked about the physical level, the etheric level, the astral level. Then there was the causal level, the Buddhic level. These different, what they called separations of. I don't know what you would call it. It's too difficult. It's kind of philosophical as you get into it, and they're buzzwords that you use, but do you really understand them? But anyway, the lower astral, even Dr. David R. Hawkins from Sedona talked about the lower astral, is where evil entities that on his scale of consciousness calibrate below the level of courage. Evil entities that die in the physical go to this area. So it's basically a hell area where hellions are kept because they're still consciousnesses, and the consciousnesses are preserved. They can't, well, I don't know if they can be destroyed or not. It's not explained. It's just said that's where these beings live. The demonics live in the lower astral, which is very close to planet Earth, what we experience in the physical. So that's why demons can have their way with humans. It's very hard to get your head around it because even when you see pictures of it or whatever, someone's artistic interpretation of it, it's just like it's somebody's diagram of what it might be, a map. But the point of it is, if their consciousness is evil, can you really remove an evil consciousness from the great field of consciousness? I mean, you can kill a murderer, you can execute a murderer and get rid of the physical body, but when the body dies in the afterlife, what happens to that consciousness? Well, as I said yesterday, I mean, you could take it to the great central sun in this mythology where you strip away its memories and its abilities to think and do anything other than just witness things. And sometimes even when you go into deep sleep, it seems like you're not even existing. So maybe you could do that. I don't have a solution what to do with these evil demonic beings, other than if they are programs. Everything in the Matrix was a sentient program. In other words, a self-aware program that appeared as a human in the Matrix movies. Deleting these programs from our reality, deletion would be the best thing to do with these things, to remove them. They cannot be reprogrammed, can they? Maybe they can. Who programmed them to be evil? Where did this all start? The origins of man, the origins of the gods, all the mythologies of a real, like a one God, a unitary God that is Judeo-Christian, Muslim, the God of Abraham, who started off as a nasty, nasty being called Jehovah, would, help one group of humans kill other humans, or, became the great Father God of Jesus, but the one that basically wanted Jesus to be crucified for some crazy, absolutely crazy book, the rationale of why Jesus had to be crucified and tortured, and then make a religion out of it and make Jesus a human god or something. Absolutely horrible story. It's supposed to be teaching goodness, and all it teaches you is absolute horror. The ultimate horror book that's taught all the time to people is the Jesus story. If you're a Christian, really, this is what it's all based upon. The torturing of a man who volunteered to be tortured because his godfather arranged it for him. This is what your will is, Godfather, for me to be tortured. That's basically the story. This benevolent God, the God of Jesus, tortured his only son, tortured him to death, almost horrible way. This is the benevolent God of the Christians. It's still the Old Testament God that's killing humans, torturing humans. So if you're a Christian, you need to go back and read this story and look at what this God is like. This is not a good God, this Christian God. It says be kind to others or whatever, and the God of this Christian religion, what does it do? It tortures its son, tortures it to death. There's real problems with this Christian religion, and it's been used many times. It was used at one time to justify slavery in the southern states of the United States. It was used to justify, and to this day is used to terrorize gays. It was used so many ways to keep people down. Is it a benevolent thing? I mean, the golden rule seems good enough, but that seems to get buried. It's not like reinforced. Why don't they just say when you walk into church, be kind to the people next to you, be kind to everything, be kind, be humane? Why don't they tell you that? Why don't they tell you all these ridiculous stories, these horror stories, and then have you drink the blood of Christ like you're a vampire? What the hell? This is my body and this is my blood. That's vampirism. That's a horror story. And this is Christianity today. And then you wonder why you've got pedophile priests in the Vatican doing cocaine and having gay orgies. Do I think there's anything wrong with these things? Cocaine is a highly addictive drug. Using rent boys from the street, prostitution is basically exploitation of very young boys. The hypocrisy of it all is saying, God doesn't want you to be gay and all the priests are gay. It's a religion of fear, and it tortures those people. It's self-torture, because once you adopt these Christian religions, it develops an internal problem that you've got, because the whole thing is internally inconsistent. It's an illogical religion, and it's designed to create self-loathing, fear of punishment. Does it actually generate people being kind? I think people who are naturally kind are going to be kind, but they're also going to have all these horrible ideas that are attached to being kind. And in the end, they're complicit because they keep going back to these churches. And, they feel guilty if they don't give a nice big donation to pay for the pedophile priest. What should you do with these kind of humans? Execute them. What if you execute the wrong person? Well, execute them humanely. So, if they catch me, don't torture me to death. I mean, if I didn't do anything wrong, but, I've been framed, give me something like Nembuthol. In Canada, where they made legalize euthanasia, legalize suicide for people who are, for example, people with Parkinson's disease. It's a terminal illness, it's a long, horrible death. And they give them this drug which kills them humanely. It's not a painful death. It basically is like what they would give if you take your old dog to the vet to be put to sleep. It's basically the same thing. It puts you to sleep and you're dead. So if you're using that thing and you got the wrong person, you haven't tortured them. They just go to sleep and don't wake up. Sure, you've cut short their life, but if that's the sacrifice that you've got to do in order to use the same thing on evil vermin that torture other humans, the evil, evil, evil doers, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. You use this, put them to sleep with Neanderthal, and bring back capital punishment. David Wilcock talks about this a little bit in his commentaries about the so-called cabal, the so-called deep state. And he says, you're going to have to forgive some of these ones so they'll turn state's evidence against the other dark ones. And then he tells the story about how they scared senators into looking the other way at what the evil they do, because what they did is they kidnapped a senator and they took him out somewhere where they had a wood chipper. It's the machine that you take if you've got a large tree and you want to turn it into little chips, like the size of potato chips. And then they took somebody, and in front of the senator, they threw that person into the wood chipper. And what happens is it's got a great big blade on it, that's used for chipping very hard wood. And you throw a human into it, and what happened is that, out the back where the wood chips go, instead of wood chips, you see a spray of blood and gore. And that's what they showed the senator, and they said, this is the kind of people we are. This is what we're going to do to you or your family if you don't go along with us. And so David Wilcock says, you're going to have to forgive some of these people so they'll turn state's evidence against the other dark ones. Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to forgive someone like this? Give them a break? The ones that go and throw people into wood chippers? No, the only solution is to execute these people. Don't be like them. Don't torture them to death. Just execute them with Neanderthal like they're an old dog that you loved and you don't want to see suffer anymore. My hat is the Toronto Raptors, the Velociraptors, and that's what these people are like. They're like those from Jurassic Park, the Velociraptors, the reptilians that went around, very smart, and they predated in a group, gang stalking their victims, the raptors. I find myself repeating these kind of stories, these kind of horror stories a lot lately, primarily because I'm tortured by these kind of beings using their technological methods to terrorize me. And this is what they want you to know, that they're real and they're horrible, and this is what they do. It's really weird too, because they use things like shadow banning so that you're, when I put my videos up on Instagram or YouTube, very few people get to see them. So if you do see them, they know you're watching. Why? Because it's an element of their terrorizing. They're sick fucks, these people. They're unbelievable sick. The sickness is actively pursuing people to predate on them, terrorize them. Some people call them louche demons because they get a strange thrill from the energy put off by a terrorized being. When they're around you, You know them, and they're so vile, they're so disgusting. That's the only thing you want to do is delete them from existence. I'm Harry Weaver.